Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. Hope you're all doing very well today. I came across a series of articles about Heisman Trophy winner Billy Cannon, and I had to share this stuff with you because, guys, this is an amazing story, and I think you're going to find it really fascinating. Billy Cannon has probably one of the nicest cards that I've seen in a long time, and it's the 1962 Flair football. And it's I don't have it. I want to add it to my collection, and it's fairly affordable too. He has a few other really nice cards, and this story, the one I'm going to share with you guys today, I think you're going to find it really fascinating and just how resilient somebody can be in the face of adversity, although it's adversity that I think he directly caused. I'm not going to ruin it for you guys, but here it is, and I'll catch you on the flip side. This is from the Shreveport Journal, July 11th, 1983, Shreveport, Louisiana. Cannon, Farewell to a Hero by Stan Tinner. At the height of the infamous Black Sox scandal that rocked baseball in 1919, a young fan captured the deep feeling of disappointment and resentment in the nation when he confronted shoeless Joe Jackson, the disgraced star of the Chicago team, and asked him to say it ain't so, Joe. Saturday's news that LSU's great Heisman Trophy winner, Billy Cannon, was a counterfeiter shattered one of the last icons on my shelf of personal heroes. Like the boy in Chicago, I wanted to beg for a denial, but he has already confessed to his guilt, so I'm left to ponder the status of heroes and to wonder if they all die young. Billy Cannon was the first athletic hero I ever touched. There were others before him, but they were names or photographs in the paper rendered as fragile and destructible as the newsprint which portrayed them to me. And they were in New York or Boston or St. Louis, and Billy Cannon was here. In all of the world, there were few men as far as the halfback from blue collar Issarooma High School in Baton Rouge, and there were few who were stronger. I believed, as I did others, that this was the best combination of speed and strength when living. Knowledgeable sports writers said that he could have competed in the Olympics in either the short dashes or with some work as a weightlifter, but he did neither. Instead, he chose to be a premier player in college football, wearing the purple and gold of his state university. He used his superior speed and power to slash through and beyond tacklers. Though he was most known as a runner, he was also an excellent receiver, and well as the team's punter, he was a punishing tackler from his linebacker position in the latter days of football's two-way players, and in the Sugar Bowl, it was his halfback pass to Blanchard's Mickey Mangum and produced a victory over Clemson and LSU's only national championship. His most remarkable moment as a player may have been the finest play in the history of collegiate football on Halloween night of 1959 against arch-rival Ole Miss. Billy Cannon's fourth quarter punt return of 89 yards for the game-winning touchdown defied the rules of possibility. He was smothered by a mob of Ole Miss defenders, only to break free, but was hit time and time again by more of the rebel team. Each time it would seem he was stopped, but each time he would emerge beyond their grasp, running free again. Finally he was in the open, and his thoroughbred legs galloping at full stride, carrying him to glory and immortality. Billy Cannon was at the zenith of his popularity when I met him. I was a high school sophomore attending the spring livestock show on the LSU campus, and he was an All American involved in spring practice. Quite by accident, we happened to be running around the LSU track at the same time late one afternoon when I realized I was running alongside Billy Cannon. I quickly seized the moment to introduce myself as a sports writer for the Fair Park powwow and to ask if I might interview him the following season when LSU played Baylor at Shreveport's State Fair Stadium. He was more than courteous, he was friendly, and did not seem at all bothered by the many questions of the young scribe. He said he would be more than happy to grant an interview, but said I would have to get a pass to the dressing room from Sports Information Director Ace Higgins, late father of Journal sports writer Ron Higgins. Ace Higgins gave me my pass, and following a 21 to nothing LSU victory over the Baylor team, I showed up outside the Tiger dressing room with my powwow photographer in tow. Cannon and the LSU team were riding high. They were the defending national champions, and they were ranked number one in the nation, carrying an undefeated record and America's longest winning streak of 18 victories late in the 1959 season. Sports writers crowded around the LSU dressing room, waiting the word to go inside and see the champions, but they waited in vain that day, for Billy Cannon was the victim of the flu. He had played a fine game despite a high fever, but he would not see the press, and we were told. Paul Dietzel, the LSU coach, and Johnny Robinson, the other LSU halfback, met the sports writers outside the dressing room, as did others on that team, in impromptu press conferences. But I hung around the dressing room door, hoping for at least a glimpse of my hero. Finally, I marshaled enough courage to show the guard at the door my dressing room pass, and to tell him I was a friend of Billy Cannon. Before the guard could finish his sorry kid speech, a voice from the darkness beyond my view asked, "Is that you, Stanley? Let him in." I got my story for the Fair Park powwow that day, even though the wire services and the big papers did not. It was a day that certainly played a part in a boy's decision to become a newspaperman, and it sealed Billy Cannon as a giant among the heroes of my life. Almost a quarter century has passed since that day, with a speed I would not have thought possible. Although Billy Cannon performed well in a professional game, he did not achieve the stardom that many had expected. Still, he was one of the main reasons that the American Football League gained credibility during its formative years, and he earned All-Pro status as a tight end. In time, he retired to be an orthodontist in his hometown, a combination which should have assured him the measure of pleasure and comfort deserved by a man who was a legend while still a boy. That is the way Billy Cannon existed, in my mind at least, until Saturday. Somehow I saw him in idyllic harmony with the world, living in a large, comfortable house on a three-lined boulevard painted with azaleas and magnolias. That Billy Cannon played golf twice a week and maintained a handicap of less than 10. He occasionally worked in a patient's mouth, signed autographs, loved his wife and children, and didn't cheat on his taxes. Somehow I thought I would probably drop by to visit and introduce my boys to him so they could meet my hero. I am hard pressed to say why I was so surprised on Sunday night when I first heard that Billy Cannon was a crook. I have grown up in a time full of such disappointing revelations. I am a child of the American age of lies and crooks, of Vietnam and Watergate. Still, I am more disappointed toward hearing of the larceny of political figures than Billy Cannon's. Americans invest their athletic champions with worshipful virtues. Hardly anyone can measure up to our expectations in such an agitatory environment, yet we are incredibly forgiving of many of their indiscretions. I am angry in this moment, not so much because Billy Cannon has sullied his own reputation, but because he has tarnished such a private and special part of growing up. Boys' memories deserve better. This is from the Caldwell Watchman, June 13th, 2018, Columbia, Louisiana. The highs and lows of Billy Cannon, the toast of LSU, by Jim Brown. Billy Cannon died this week. He was a Louisiana sports legend. There are some things you just don't forget, where you were on 9/11 or when President John Kennedy was shot. Down here in the Bayou State, add to those special dates. Halloween night 59 years ago when Billy Cannon made football history with his 87-yard run to beat Ole Miss and keep the Tigers undefeated. His story is the rise and fall, then rise again by LSU's all-time great sports hero. Even those who are not Tiger fans have to admit it was one heck of a run. Cannon either sidestepped or pushed away tackler after tackler as he weaved his way towards the end zone. I wish I had $1 for every time the magical run has replayed on television. You can imagine the crowd's reaction on most Saturday night football nights in Tiger Stadium as once again the fans in the stadium and the millions of national television see Ole Miss's Billy tear through the rebel opposition. This feat by Cannon allowed the Tigers to beat Ole Miss 7-3 and made him a celebrity for life. Paul Revere had his famous ride and Billy Cannon had his remarkable run. Cannon went on to play professional football with the Houston Oilers and the Oakland Raiders. Then he went to dental school and built a successful dental practice in Baton Rouge. Because of his popularity, Cannon's practice flourished to an estimated $300,000 a year, quite a sum in the 1960s. But then his celebrity world came crashing down, and I played a small role in his demise. It was 1983, and I was in my first term as Louisiana Secretary of State. I was in my office one afternoon when my secretary said there were two Treasury agents to see me, and they demanded immediate attention. They pulled out a $100 bill saying it was a fake and that it had shown up in the Secretary of State's bank account. I had my staff go over all the various billing and deposit records, and we were able to determine that a local attorney used the $100 bill to pay for a corporate filing. We later learned that it was the first Canon-made counterfeit bill to be discovered in the Baton Rouge area. Others quickly appeared, and a major money printing operation was broken open a few months later. The seventh largest counterfeiting ring in American history was no more. For years thereafter, when I made speeches around the state, I relished in telling those in attendance how I knew the bill was counterfeit. Quote, down at the bottom of a $100 bill where it says, "In God we trust." Well, on the Cannon $100 bill, it said, "Go to hell, Old Miss." Cannon quickly confessed and helped prosecutors crack the case wide open. At the sentencing, Cannon told federal judge Frank J. Pelosa, "What I did was wrong, terribly wrong, and I have done everything within my power to correct my mistakes." To thousands of LSU fans, Cannon's confession pierced at the very heart of their allegiance and adulation of LSU's great sports hero, like the little boy who pleaded with Shoeless Joe Jackson of the Chicago White Sox on the courthouse steps in the famous Black Sox baseball scandal of 1919. All many LSU fans could think was, "Say it ain't so, Billy." As part of Cannon's redemption, he took on the job of dentist up at Angola State Penitentiary, an hour's drive north of Baton Rouge. The guards and inmates alike loved him up there. Do fans still hold a grudging disappointment with Cannon? Well, when he was introduced a few years ago at Tiger Stadium just after being admitted to the College Football Hall of Fame, the cheering went on. Repeated efforts by the stadium announcer to quiet the fans down fell on deaf ears. Neither the president nor the Pope would have gotten such an avid ovation. Billy was back, and he had been forgiven. Billy Cannon, like few others, has experienced the dramatic highs and lows of being a major sports hero in Louisiana. F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote that in life there are no second acts, and Thomas Wolfe wrote that you can't go home again. Billy Cannon proved them both wrong, and now he will go home to meet his maker. People associate me with football regardless of where I go, except when their tooth hurts. They don't care where I played football or not. They just want the toothache to stop. Billy Cannon. So when I was about 10 years old or so, my dad and I completed the 1987 Topps set, the pigeon set of the hobby, as I like to call it, because it was more common than pigeons, and I think it still is. In fact, I have a love-hate relationship with the 1987 Topps set, as you guys can well imagine. But there was something really interesting about this because as I was completing the set with my dad, he said to me, he's like, ball players are not to be admired. They're not to be put up on a pedestal. And what he was referring to was the card I had in my hand of Wade Boggs. And at the time, Wade Boggs was admired in the Wade Boggs Margot Adams affair. And this is really the first time that I saw ball players kind of like not what they presented themselves to be on a card. And really, that's really the only thing that we're seeing is the card themselves. And it's really an image trapped in time, if you will, what the player or the person was doing on that image. And it sparked a lot of like I guess memories for me, but also my imagination as to what was going on in that photo. What could have Wade Boggs have been doing during the time when that photograph was taken? And so a lot of times, it's just a moment trapped in time, as I say. But I always treat people the same as I want to be treated. Really, no different between a president or a governor or the guy collecting my trash or the local tax man or whoever it is. I treat everybody the same, and because I'm a journalist, I don't have the luxury of adulation. I don't have the luxury of kind of like admiring a lot of people because it could hamper my outlook on the person that I'm interviewing. Now it's a lot different when I'm interviewing card collectors or hobbyists. That's different. You should never put anyone on a high pedestal because there won't you'll be more disappointed if they do what Billy Cannon has done. And I think that's what these two writers said, that they were very disappointed when they heard their boyhood idol did this. I think it's really kind of interesting too that you would have a man of Billy Cannon's stature within the community and someone who is highly respected and a dentist as well do something like this. I don't really understand it. I think that he would be making a lot of money. Although you can make a lot of money and still be piss poor. You could be asset rich and cash poor. We saw that in the movie Boiler Room. If you guys haven't seen that movie, go and check it out. It's a great movie. It's actually, I would consider it actually a poor man's Wall Street, if you will. But also, the Tom Wolfe is also mentioned in one of these articles, and his book Bonfire of the Vanities was pretty decent. He's actually a really good writer, so I'm glad he actually mentioned that. If you guys haven't read any of his books, I highly recommend them. I think there was one of them, Mau Mauing the Flat Catchers, was another one I halfway read, but that was actually quite a good book as well. Now I'm getting off on a totally different subject. Thank you, appreciate it. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think about Billy Cannon here and why he may have committed this crime. It doesn't really make sense to me, to tell you the truth. But forgery is something in the hobby that goes back to at least 1971, and it is a major problem, especially with newer technology in printing that I think it's maybe harder and harder to detect forgeries within the hobby. I would say to anybody that you need to study the hobby, you need to study printing in order to detect forgeries and know exactly what you are buying before you buy it. I think it's very important. So I'm not telling you guys not to follow in the footsteps of people that inspire you to either get into a profession or say maybe the hobby. Personally for me, my father and my cousin were very inspirational to me, and well, they still are. I mean, my father hasn't been around in a long time, but he was every bit the person that I wanted to be growing up, and I can still remember all his advice that he gave me, and same with my cousin too. Very inspirational guys, both of them. And I'm not just saying that because they're my family members, but you really kind of have to be careful of the people that you surround yourself with and the advice that you're given to. I was very fortunate in that I had a great family and good friends and a good group of card collectors, older guys that took me under their wing to teach me the ropes of the hobby when I was a kid. I think that that's what I really wanted to do, more so as collecting cards, was to teach other people and kind of like help them along in their journey. I'm not entirely sure how Billy Cannon got into that kind of a predicament. Maybe he hung out with the wrong people. Maybe he had financial issues. I just don't know, and he's not here to explain why he did what he did. And I'm not entirely sure if he ever gave any interviews about that. Personally, if it was me, I probably would not. But you never know; it could help. Frank Abagnale Jr. He uh, he gave interviews as to why he did what he did, and he was a master forger. And he's in that movie Catch Me If You Can. If you haven't seen that one, that's pretty great too. And I also heard too that he's the inspiration behind that TV series White Collar, which again I thought that was a really good series. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it as always. And let me know what you think about Billy Cannon. And if you have any favorite cards of his, I'd always love to hear. I don't have the 1962 Flair. That's a really interesting set. I think Flair in the 1960s is really kind of fascinating too. They have a great story behind them. And I know a lot of people like their 1963 baseball set, which I love the design on that set. And it's actually not to get too much off topic here, which I always end up doing, but the 1963 Flair baseball set was one of the very first cards that I came across as a teenager, and I picked up a few of those cards. It was really, really interesting to me, and it was kind of like another reason why I wanted to study sports cards and kind of find out who Frank Flair was and how the design was formed. So anyway, guys, I always like to babble on this stuff, but I love doing this. I love to kind of teach you guys, and I also love to hear what you guys have to say as well. So I will talk to you later in another video, and I hope you have a good one. Bye.